So far, we've built a complete sign-up form for our mobile app, and we've learned a lot of basics about the property editor. Within this same view, let's now add a login form to complete the experience. And this will give us a nice opportunity to learn a few last foundational concepts within the property editor, custom states, as well as a slightly more advanced kind of expression that unlocks a lot of opportunities for future building. So first, let's start by just building out a login form. And we could build it by scratch like we built this one, but instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold Shift and click on our 4 elements here. And I'm going to right click, and I'm going to group these elements into a column container. Now you'll notice that we lost our gap spacing. That's because the gap spacing was applied to the overall view. Parent containers apply their settings to their direct child elements. Our 4 form elements are no longer direct child elements of the view. They're child elements of this group that we just created. So, simple fix. Under visual, let's go and apply the same gap spacing. I think we were using 16 pixels. So we fixed that. And now, just so that it's easy for us to reference later, I'm going to rename the group following a name convention that I typically like to use in building, G-signup. G stands for group. And naming conventions like that are important in general, and they're going to become a lot more important for us in just a minute. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this group and hold Command D, or Control D if you're using Windows, and that duplicates it. Let's rename this to G login, and we can rename the text and the button as well. And we're done. We have 2 forms, one for sign up, one for login. And you'll notice if you click into some of these elements that duplicated over, that almost all of our settings have come with the duplication. So for example, this input is still configured as an email format. This one is still configured as a password format. And if we click on this button, we can go here and see that there's still the conditional applied to this one as well, which is great. Really, the only thing that didn't carry over is the workflow. This button does not have any workflow, but that's good. That's exactly what we wanted. Login is supposed to be a different trigger event anyway. So actually, let's go ahead and build that now. So we'll create a new event, and under account, instead of sign the user up, we will do log the user in. This is another database process that Bubble prepackages for us. Now all we need to do is connect the inputs like we've done before, except, small glitch, if I type in input email, we can see that there's actually 2 input emails. So I wanted us to see this so that we can see the kind of thing that you want to avoid. This is why I've been saying it's so important for us to keep up with naming conventions. So I'm actually going to go to this duplicated input email, and I'll say input email, and I'll just add in login so that it's a little bit clearer which one is which. We'll do the same for the password. And what's cool is Bubble is smart enough to know that the conditional that we duplicated over, you want it to apply to these new inputs because that's what you duplicated it with. So we don't have to make any changes like that. We can see that it is, in fact, now calling and always was calling the correct input. Okay, let's go back to the workflow. We can do it right from here. So we are logging the user in as step 1, and now I can search for input. And now it's very clear to me that this is the correct input that I want you to take. Same for password. Down here, you can see, remember the email as a required field. I'll just say yes for now, but you could just as easily take an input form and add a checkbox here and set the value of this remember the email property to be that checkbox's value. I'm not going to do that, but feel free to if you wish. Like we did with our other signup flow, let's go ahead and add those other 2 actions as well. So this is logging in. So let's create a new login log. I'll just click add all fields and can get that immediately. And we'll look for current geographic position and user. We can just say current user. I'm noticing two issues. One is the issue that I expected, the Google geocode thing that we mentioned last time. That's just something that you need to set up for the geographic position to be detected. This other one, though, log the user in, password should be text. Yeah, I think I just forgot to add value. Always keep an eye out for the issue checker in case you might have missed something. Okay, great. So now we have two forms for two different circumstances, but seeing both of them at once is a little bizarre, right? So this is where our new concept comes in, custom states. So what we're going to do here is we're going to assign a toggleable state to this view so that the user can choose which form they want the app to show them. Picture it kind of like a light switch, except instead of just clicking between on or off, we'll be clicking between sign up and log in. That's the custom state that we'll be building today. That is a very simple example of a custom state. You can get way more complex than a simple light switch, but I want to keep this relatively straightforward. So for now, why don't we build it, and then I'll talk through what the concept unlocks overall after. So first thing to note is that you can apply a custom state to any element, but since our light switch effect is meant to affect the overall view, it makes sense to me personally to apply it not to any of these elements, but just to the view overall, to the canvas. So I'll click the canvas. We'll see this button here, custom states. Let's click that and let's add a new one. And here you can see that we can define this custom state around any kind of data type. Again, custom states can get kind of complex, but thinking through what we want for just 1 second, we want a light switch. That's a binary setting, up or down, on or off. Yes or no. So let's try yes, no. That'll be the type of custom state that we have. And let's just give it a better name so that it makes sense to us later. I'm going to try returning user question mark. So with this state, we're literally asking the view, is this user a returning user who needs to log in, or are they new and need to sign up? By default, let's go ahead and keep it checked off. So that means by default, when a user opens this view, the page will first assume that they are new and need to be shown the sign up form unless told otherwise. Okay, now we need to go back to our two forms and edit them so that only one of them shows up at a time based on the custom state that we just created. We want to conditionally show and hide the form based on that state, so we will add a conditional. Let's start with the sign up form. We'll go here and we'll add a new conditional. And for our when, we can actually reference the custom state directly from the view. I'll scroll down all the way to elements and we can see our sign up login view right here at the bottom. And right here, we see custom state. So when the view's returning user is no, that is the complete expression, meaning it's not a returning user, then this form's visibility is on. One nifty thing about the property editor is I can actually copy and paste conditions. So I'm now going to go to the login group, right click, paste condition. And then we'll just adjust it to be the inverse. So when the view's returning user is yes, then we want this element to be visible. Now there's one more thing we need to do to make sure that this actually works. On each group, let's go to interaction, and under visibility, we can see that visible on view load is toggled on. Let's actually toggle that off, and let's do it for both groups. So now, by default, both views start invisible, which means now the only thing that can make them visible is if the correct custom state is active. And like we said, by default, the state is toggled off. So by default, when this view opens, the sign up form should be the only thing visible. Let me preview to see if that is actually the case. Yep, sign up form is the only thing that's visible. Awesome. Great. So now we've set up and programmed our light switch. We're just missing one thing. The view assumes the user is new unless told otherwise. But how do we tell it otherwise? How does the user actually flip that switch? we need to give the user something to interact with that can toggle the custom state on or off. Since we already have a big button visible here in our design, let's just do a text element instead. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a text element underneath. And here in my elements tree, you can see that it's not part of either group. It's just sitting by itself underneath. And I'll center it. And for now, I'm not going to do much of any design to it. I'm just going to label it toggle custom state. And just to make it feel a little more interactive, I'll underline it. Would help if I could spell custom correctly. We're going to rename this later. I just want the connectivity of all of this to be really visible at the start. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this text element and we are going to add 2 workflows to the same element. Let's go ahead and add the first. So I'll add a workflow. And we're going to say that when this is tapped, you can search for this, but I'm also just going to show you where it is. Under element actions, there is an option called set state of an element. This is how you affect custom states. So the element that we want is the element that has the custom state. That's sign up login right there at the top. And it already knows there's only one custom state there, so it's auto-populated that for us. So when this text element is tapped, let's set returning user to be yes. So now when this text element is tapped, we'll flip the switch. But what if we want to switch it back? Very easy. Let's do it in 2 parts. First, on this existing workflow, if I go back to the event, you can see here that we can add conditions to workflows as well. So let's only have it flip the switch when the custom state is currently off. When it's currently off, we'll have it switch it to on. So I'll just grab the view, the full canvas, sign up, login, returning user is no. So when it is no, then set it to yes. And just to reiterate, these workflows are still viewable and editable from the property editor in the design tab. And in fact, as we've seen before, the property editor also lets us copy, paste, and duplicate. You could do it in the workflow tab too, but it's nice to keep an eye on the whole canvas so that we can see all of the different pieces that we're working with all at once. So from here, I'll right click on that workflow and I will say duplicate workflow. And now we have 2 when the element is tapped. And I'll go ahead and click this one and we'll change this condition to be when it is yes. This time we will set the state back to no. And just to be super organized, I'll right click and rename tap set to no. Tap set to yes. Great. So now, theoretically, the custom state is all set up. The light switch should work. Let's test it out. So by default, it opens up on we are not a returning user, so it's no. And if I press this, great, it switches to login. And if I press it again, it switches back. Perfect. And that's it. That's a very simple example of custom states. 2 things to just take a step back on and consider. First, one of the advantages of custom states is that they are essentially temporary data. In practical terms, this means your app is not holding on to any kind of memory about how these states are set. So if the light switch gets toggled on, but then you refresh or reopen the app, it will revert back to its default every time. That's important to know because you can use it to your advantage as you're building. What if we have a really complex sign-up flow where we're asking the user for a lot of data up front? What if that user then bails halfway through? We may want to capture that information in a custom state first, before the user actually completes their profile. That way the app isn't beholden to any of that data until the user actually commits to being part of our database. That kind of segues into the second thing I want to call out. Sometimes one way to build will be more efficient than the others, and you'll want to get better at knowing those. Other times, it's more just about what do you think will solve the problem in a way that's easy for you to maintain or update later after your app is more complex. For example, and I'm just going to demonstrate this, you don't have to follow. Instead of this yes/no custom state, we could have created one that was type number, and we could have labeled it screen number. And then let's say the default is 1. So what if our sign up form is only visible when the default screen is 1 and our login form is only visible when the default screen is 2? A system like that could be really useful if you wanted a staggered signup flow. Let's say instead of worrying about toggling between forms, what if we want to walk the user through multiple different steps along the same journey? So maybe screen 1 just asks for your email and password, but then screen 2 takes it a step further and asks for you to come up with a username. And then screen 3 takes it a step even further and asks you to upload a profile picture, and so on and so forth. That's the idea. That is the kind of thing that is possible with custom states. I'm just going to delete that real quick. Speaking of what's possible, I mentioned at the start that I also wanted to share a more advanced kind of expression. Let's go ahead and do that now. This text here that we added at the end, this is our light switch. It's very clear what it's doing, but it's not very on brand for our user experience for it to just say toggle custom state. Feels like we should have it say something different depending on what our light switch is currently set to. If you're on one screen but you want to get to the other, maybe it says one thing and it says something different if you're on the other screen. We could do this with a conditional. We could add conditionals here, right? We could do it with conditionals. And our when would be when the custom state is yes, the text reads X, and when the custom state is no, the text reads Y. But again, in line with kind of this recurring theme that we've been discussing, Bubble gives us more than one way to do this. And since the expression composer is a big part of the property editor, I think it could be cool to show off one more advanced concept right here. So we've already sort of encountered this option to add dynamic text. Let's go ahead and do that. Instead of toggle custom state, let's first just check within the text element what the custom state is. So again, I can reference any element from here. So I'll reference our canvas where I can pull our custom state. And before I do anything else, I'm actually just going to stop right there. That's technically a valid expression because this is just checking what is the value of the custom state. We can see here it evaluates to a yes or no. So in fact, if I preview, we are not a returning user. That's our default. And if I click it, it shows us yes. So now we can literally see our custom state dynamically working. But we're going to go a step further. Even though this is a completed expression, we can modify it further with operators. I'll click this add button, and you're going to see this operator here called formatted as text. This lets us display any kind of text based on whether or not it is yes or no. So if we think about it for a sec, this text is supposed to lead us to the opposite state, which means for yes, meaning we are currently looking at the login form, we will label this create a new account. If I'm a user and I've somehow found my way to the login page, I want a clear path to get back to signing up, and vice versa. If the custom state is no, which means the sign up form is showing up, I want to know how to get to the login form. So maybe we can say I already have an account. One more thing that you'll notice with dynamic expressions is that they can start to get pretty long and messy, and that is why the property editor also has this very nice canvas placeholder. So I'll just put I already have an account down here. I could have also done create a new account, but I just did this one because it's a little longer. And in general, I like to see the longer option if there's multiple options here, just so that I can see how it formats properly. And I know that anything shorter will be even better. So this is similar to a conditional, but too many conditionals can become a bit cumbersome to manage, especially if you have multiple elements with multiple conditionals. So this is an equally valid option that can just be a little bit more direct. And the real power of this is, just to show you, I can even add dynamic data within this operator. So in the end, I can end up having one text element that holds all kinds of information with all kinds of permutations. That's just one small example of how deep the expression composer can go within the property editor. If I go back and I preview it, I already have an account, so take me to login. I don't have an account to log into, so I'd like to create a new account. Awesome. So as we wrap up here, the main thing I hope that this has communicated is that with the property editor, and really Bubble as a whole, there's almost always more than one way to achieve something. It's up to you and what you think is best for your app, and for you as the builder who has to now maintain and manage this going forward. This is true when you are visually editing, like we just were, or when you're prompting with the AI agent. Knowing what you want to build is one thing. Having a mind towards systems design, user experience, all of those things, even on a basic level, will really level you up. So now you can suggest if you want the agent to build out something in a certain way for you. Or maybe the agent will suggest an alternative that you like, and now you can have this really collaborative dynamic. Either way, it's your app, and now you'll have the most control over the building process, having learned the property editor and all its visual tools, interactive settings, conditional properties, custom states, and expressions. What else are you hoping to learn how to do with the property editor? We may add some supplemental lessons to this tutorial series in the future, but for now, those are the basics. So in the meantime, thanks so much for watching, and happy building.